Jesu Christus. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever.
Remind me next year not to schedule a morning liturgy at 5 a.m. anymore right after the festival, because it certainly seems like 5 a.m. for those of you who are working all day at the festival. But anyway, let's talk about the scriptures in our Lord. I know you still like stories, and this particular story, I'm not quite sure how true it is. Maybe it's urban legend, but it's a good story with a good point. You ever hear of the Impressionist painter Picasso? You ever see his paintings? You ever make sense of them? No. Okay, so Picasso was commissioned to paint a portrait of General Custer's last stand. You know, when General Custer was overrun by all the Indians, and he made a stand at where he did. Little Big Horn, right? Yeah. I know you were going to say that. That's when he encountered all the Indians, and Picasso was asked what was going through Custer's mind in this last scene, and painted painting of it. So he did all sorts of research and all sorts of homework and investigation, something I know like Joe Genis would do.
Yep.
And so when the time came for the revealing of his painting, there it was, the impressionistic Picasso painting. And it had a cow with a halo. You know what a halo is, right? Like over the saints' heads. A cow with a halo, and a whole bunch of Indians holding little wads, little balls of cotton. And he said that was Custer's last stand. And they asked him to explain. Well, he said, isn't it obvious? General Custer's last thoughts when he made his last stand are, holy cow, where did all these cotton-picking Indians come from? Now, we got into the mind of Picasso, we thought he got into the mind of Custer. Now we're going to try to get into the mind of our Lord, who got into the mind and into the heart of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus was the tax collector who was accused of defrauding many people, but Zacchaeus stood his ground, and when he went up on the sycamore tree, he wanted to see what everybody else was talking about. He wanted to see our Lord. And our Lord, among all the other people there, looked at Zacchaeus, and our Lord looked beyond what everybody else thought of this man of short stature who had a reputation of being a fraudulent tax collector. Many tax collectors did have that reputation at the time, and Zacchaeus was certainly probably first among them. We don't know if it was true or not, but that was the reputation that he had. And so people sort of steered away from him. But our Lord said, among all others there present, you up there on the tree, Zacchaeus, I mean to come to your house today and dine with you. And people were dumbfounded at this. Why, they said, would Jesus go to a house of a man we know to be a sinner? And the answer is, he looked into the heart of Zacchaeus and he saw something. Either he saw a repentant sinner, or he saw a man who was upright of heart. We don't know what he saw, but either one of those things, whether we're upright of heart or whether we're imperfect but repentant, is exactly what our Lord wants to see when he peers into our hearts. Have you ever tried to look into the heart of another person? It's not terribly easy, is it? But yet we opt to do that so frequently when we ourselves render judgments. And yet we ask our Lord to look into our own hearts and be merciful to us. What do we think our Lord will see if he would look with, let's say, double vision? Or how about, everybody ever go to the doctors? No? Okay, well, I've been to the doctors a number of times, and I know they have things called x-ray machines. You ever have an x-ray? That's the less sophisticated thing of an MRI, right? So, what if you had x-ray vision? Or MRI vision? Or CAT scan vision? You can look into the heart of someone else and see exactly what they're thinking, what they're feeling. So let me ask you this. What do you think our Lord, who knows all and sees all, sees when he looks into the heart of you and me? That could be a very redeeming answer, or it could be a very frightening answer. But I think the answer we're seeking is a truthful answer, because the Lord sees the truth about you and me. And he sees the potential that we all have. That's why he called us through baptism, through discipleship, through our grace today that we receive. He sees something in us that perhaps we overlook in ourselves. And our Lord is capable of doing that, because after all, didn't he look at the Apostle Peter, who denied him, and see in him the head of his church? Didn't he look into the heart of Paul? What did Paul do? He persecuted Christians. Can you imagine that? And Paul became our apostle, the apostle to the Gentiles. Probably converted most of the world. He looked into the heart of all of the apostles, who were really not sophisticated people, fishermen, men of trade, men of work. And he saw in them the potential to make a church, a worldwide global church. He looked into the heart of saints who were first sinners. St. Augustine, who was kind of a playboy. And he saw one of the greatest doctors of the church. So what does our Lord, bless you, what does our Lord see when he looks into our heart? He sees the potential that we possess, which is precisely why he called us to be his disciples. We might see in ourselves, when we look at ourselves, the crosses and the struggles and the frailties and the limitations that we have. Sometimes we look in our hearts, kind of like in the mirror to the soul. We don't always like what we see. Sometimes we wish we were different people. Sometimes we wish we didn't have the particular struggles that we do have. But our Lord perhaps sees that these struggles, instead of causing us to simply fall and fail all the time, have the ability to make us cling to him, trust him, rely on him, and turn to him for mercy and repentance. And that's going to make us and shape us into who he wants us to be. I know you still like stories. Now, this isn't a story like the first story I told you. It's a different kind of story. The first story, I don't even know if that was true, but it's a good story. The second story I want to tell you is also about an artist, famous artist, Michelangelo. Ever hear of him?
Oh, yes.
And he was an artist and he was a sculptor. And there was a story about how he saw a block of, granite or marble, or it's a big block of uncarved stone. And he said to the man selling that stone, "How much do you want for that stone? I'd like to buy it from you." And the man said, "Well, that stone's worthless. I'll give it to you. There's nothing you can do with that stone." And Michelangelo said, "But in that stone, I see a beautiful angel." Because he saw the potential of what was inside, and all he had to do was chip away at the edges to reveal and expose that which was hidden inside. Isn't that, friends, kind of like what our Lord is doing to each one of us? With the struggles and the challenges and the occasions where we rely on him with grace every single day. Sometimes we ask God to shrug these things off our shoulders. But maybe, just maybe, by what we endure, by what we face, by what we are challenged with, maybe our Lord is kind of chipping away at us to reveal that special potential that we all have within us as disciples who are baptized and belong to him. And maybe, just maybe, it's really the sculptor at work. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory forever. Slava Novi.